Did Vikings burn their dead in ships? Seriously, imagine a landscape stitched together with stone, each chunk whispering a forgotten tale. Not just any tales, mind you, epic sagas, royal decrees, and the quiet grief of generations laid bare in intricate carvings. We're talking about Gotland, an island in the Baltic Sea where the past isn't buried, it's stacked, layered, and stubbornly refusing to stay silent. My father, a man whose hands still carry the scent of weathered stone, always said, "We're just following the stones," and he wasn't wrong. We'd walk the perimeter of our family's land, a sprawling patchwork of fields and forests marked not by fences or signs, but by these ancient memorials, picture stones. Each one a fragment of a story, a piece of a dynastic puzzle. The first stone was a simple rectangle, a gray slab etched with a stylized ship. Above it, a series of smaller panels depicted scenes: a farmer tilling his land, a warrior battling a monstrous beast, a woman weaving intricate patterns. It wasn't a complete narrative, not yet. It was a promise, a to be continued, etched in stone, and that's precisely what they were. As each new generation claimed the land, they added another stone, another chapter to the saga. The keyhole shape, a recurring motif on most of these stones, felt less like a decorative flourish and more like an invitation, a doorway to somewhere else. Let's picture it: a crisp Gotlandic autumn, the wind carrying the scent of heather and salt. The sky a bruised purple, mirroring the weathered gray of the stones. My great-grandfather's stone sat by a babbling brook, its surface slick with moss, a silent sentinel guarding a family history. My father's stone stood proudly overlooking the fields, a testament to his lineage. Each one a link in a chain stretching back centuries, a tangible connection to the men and women who'd tilled this land before us. But these weren't just pretty pictures. Archaeologists have discovered that the ships depicted on these stones, rigged with billowing sails and intricately carved figureheads, were far more than mere decoration. They were, in a sense, pictorial ship burials. Imagine a world without boats, without the vast, shimmering expanse of the Baltic. Yet here were these carvings, meticulously detailing the vessels that ruled the seas, the vessels that brought wealth, power, and, inevitably, death. Why no boat burials on Gotland itself? That's the perplexing question. Mainland Scandinavia was littered with them, lavish, elaborate tombs containing the remains of chieftains and warriors, surrounded by weapons, jewelry, and sacrificed animals. But Gotland, an island at the very heart of Baltic trade, seemed to have developed its own, quieter ritual. The stones, it turns out, were designed to tell the story of these burials, not through physical objects but through images. They were a visual tapestry, a dynastic saga unfolding across generations, and the keyhole. Perhaps a deliberate attempt to represent a portal, a gateway to the afterlife. Walking along the borders of the estate, you'd notice a recurring motif: the ship. On the panel-type stones, the ship dominated the lower half, its crew and sails depicted with astonishing detail. On the seemingly random image stones, the ship was always present, a powerful symbol anchoring the narrative. It was as if the Vikings were using these stones to create a visual record of their funerary rites, a way to ensure that their stories and their deaths would be remembered. Then there were the smaller grave monuments, rectangular stones shaped like wagons. These weren't just decorative, they were replicas of wagon burials, another common funerary practice on the mainland. Imagine a lavish burial chamber filled with the remains of a wealthy woman, her body nestled within a wagon-shaped container, surrounded by precious objects. The parallel to the picture stones was uncanny. Both were symbols of status, both were designed to commemorate the deceased, and both served as a visual reminder of the importance of lineage and family. But the stones didn't stop there. Archaeologists have unearthed chamber graves, underground rooms, sometimes up to 4 meters long, roofed with timber and covered with mounds. These weren't simple burials, they were elaborate rituals designed to honor the dead and ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. Inside, the dead were laid out in coffins, sometimes seated in chairs, surrounded by animals, weapons, and clothing. It was as if they were preparing for a final journey, a grand farewell party in the darkness, and the objects. The sheer variety and opulence of the items buried with the dead were astonishing. Jewelry, weapons, textiles, even exotic goods from distant lands, all carefully placed around the corpse, as if for them to see. One particularly bizarre find was a pair of women buried on their backs, nestled on top of one another, held together by a chain. What was the significance of this intimate arrangement? Was it a sign of affection, a symbolic representation of family bonds? It's a question that continues to puzzle archaeologists. The most intriguing discoveries came from the Åland Islands, a sparsely populated archipelago between Sweden and Finland. Here, the Vikings had a unique custom. They placed miniature clay paws, bears or beavers on top of the ceramic urns containing the ashes of the dead. This practice, found only in Åland and in specific clusters of graves in Russia, suggests that the Vikings had a diaspora of funerary rituals, spreading their customs far beyond Scandinavia. Traveling Vikings, it seems, took their traditions with them, leaving behind a trail of miniature animal paw prints across the Eurasian landscape. Now, let's talk about the chamber graves. These weren't just simple burial pits, they were meticulously constructed rooms, sometimes reaching a depth of 2 meters. The dead were laid out in coffins or on their backs or sides on the chamber floor, sometimes even sitting in chairs. The chambers were often adorned with weapons, animal sacrifices, and elaborate decorations. And the effort involved in building these chambers was immense, especially in the frozen ground of winter. It was a testament to the wealth and status of the deceased, a visible symbol of their power and influence. The most impressive example of chamber graves was found in Birka, a Viking-age trading center on Lake Mälaren in Sweden. Here, archaeologists have unearthed over 100 chamber graves, each one a miniature world, a snapshot of Viking society. One particularly lavish grave contained a man buried in a magnificent axe decorated with intricate carvings, the Mammon style. He was laid out in a coffin with a candle burning beside him, a symbolic representation of his eternal flame. But the chamber graves weren't just about wealth and status, they were also about agency. The seated corpses retained a sense of control, as if they were still present in the world. In one burial, a woman was positioned facing her home, as if she were watching over her family. In another, a man was singing in his chair, as if he were still performing his final act. These details suggest that the Vikings believed that the dead could still influence the living, that their presence could be felt long after their death. And then there's the saga of the burial at Hedeby, a Viking-age trading town on the Danish coast. Archaeologists discovered a chamber grave containing the remains of several warrior males, separated by a low partition across the floor. One of the warriors was even buried in a ship, his body lying across the deck, his weapons and armor scattered around him. It was a scene straight out of a Viking saga, a dramatic tableau of death and glory. But the most astonishing discovery came from Ibn Fadlan's account, a detailed description of a Viking funeral in the lands of the Rus. The preparations for the funeral took 10 days, during which time the dead chieftain's slaves were gathered together and asked which of them would serve as his attendants in the afterlife. The funeral procession was accompanied by music, dancing, and heavy drinking, a celebration of life and death. And finally, the chieftain was burned in a ship, his body consumed by flames, his spirit ascending to the heavens. Ibn Fadlan's account wasn't just a description of a funeral, it was a window into the Viking worldview. It revealed their beliefs about death, the afterlife, and the importance of honoring the dead. It showed that the Vikings weren't just warriors and raiders, they were complex, sophisticated people with a rich cultural heritage. The picture stones of Gotland, with their ships, their stories, and their keyhole shapes, are a testament to this complexity. They are a visual record of Viking funerary rituals, a reflection of their beliefs and values. They are a reminder that the Vikings were not just conquerors and raiders, but also artists, craftsmen, and storytellers. But the stones are more than just archaeological artifacts. They are a connection to our ancestors, a tangible link to the past. Standing before them, you can almost hear the voices of the men and women who created them, feel the weight of their history, and sense the enduring power of their stories. And as I stand there looking at my father's stone, I know what my story will show. It will be a story of family, of land, of tradition. It will be a story of the Vikings, of their ships, and of their enduring legacy. But the biggest question remains, what do those keyholes really mean? Are they simply decorative flourishes, or do they represent something more profound, a doorway to another realm, a symbol of eternity? Perhaps the answer lies not in the stones themselves, but in the stories they tell. And perhaps the most important story of all is the one that continues to unfold, generation after generation, as we follow the stones. So shall we look through, shall we talk to them for a while?